It's 2025 and the world is no longer competing for influence, but now competing for containers, for cargo routes, trade control and export dominance. From the ports of Shanghai to the factories of Gujarat, from the copper belts of Zambia to the semiconductor labs in Arizona, nations have continued to turn exports into weapons of power. Once again, I welcome you back to this week's episode of Tales of Logistics, and we are diving into export wars, the 2025 battle for global trade power. You see, for decades, the global export map was predictable. It was trade-focused. Africa produced raw materials, China manufactured, the US also manufactured and consumed, and Europe regulated. Well, it stayed like that for decades until 2020's changed everything. 2020s has been riddled with endless trade wars, strict policies on exports and sanctions, and that has led to a massive shift in the supply chain algorithm. The world's biggest buyers are spreading productions to allied countries like Vietnam, India, Mexico, South Africa, Kenya, etc., etc. For example, we have Apple that are now moving another of their products assembly line to India. That has also led to a double increase in India's exports of electronics and machinery, which in turn has led to an increase in GDP and a relevance in the global corridor of trade. If we move on to the other angle of Asia, you have Vietnam, whose ports are running day and night due to production and exportation. And when you fly down to Africa, the continent, raw materials that used to be the core of exportation is no longer enough, as countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt are trying to increase the exportation of also finished goods. So clearly we can see that the logistics map has moved into a different frequency, that global logistics is not only by trade deals, but it's now by necessity. A global economy that used to be about cooperation is now about leverage. Here are some of the examples of how things have changed in the global trade atmosphere. In Europe, Russia uses gas exports to twist Europe's arm as she continues her conquests with Ukraine. And if you go up to Asia, China has restricted rare earth material shipments, mainly to the US. You see, between late 2024 and October 2025, China has restricted 7 rare earth element exportation to the US. The latest rare earth elements that China restricted to be exported to the US are holmium and terbium. Now, these are essential elements or materials used for the production of electrical vehicle batteries. And when you come down to North America, like we see in the news, with Trump and the White House, the US is riding on a stallion horse of export wars by throwing tariff missiles and export bans to almost all nations, regardless of the pre-existing trade agreement. And even in 2025, global shipping lanes have become even more political than ever. And now it's becoming like each export ban sparks another export ban. Each restriction pushes innovation to elsewhere, and somewhere in the middle, logistics networks are breaking, adapting, and evolving. Speaking about breaking, adapting, and evolving, if you go down to the Middle East, the Middle Eastern countries are building logistics corridor that will rival the Suez and the Panama. And if you come down to Africa, the Africa's Trade Union, that is known as the AfCFTA, is quietly stitching together its own internal trade web to compete in the global atmosphere of trade. And in Latin America, that has for long been overshadowed, you now have critical alternatives to the US. For instance, Mexico. Mexico has now become a critical alternative to the US in terms of manufacturing and nearshoring. So you see, nations are racing not just to export, but also to control how exports move. Because whoever controls logistics controls trade. And whoever controls trade controls influence. Who can ship when the seas are blocked? Who can trade when the chips are banned? Who can adapt when the world shifts overnight. Export power is no longer about size of commodities exported. It's now about how you can survive when the chips are down. It's now about how you can survive when that restriction, that ban, that limitation strikes your country border. So the big question then comes to, who is winning the export war of 2025? If you check inflation, if you check cost of living, if you check the dwindling supply chain, the low production, and the rising unemployment, whether you looking about it locally or regionally or globally, then absolutely no one wins this ongoing trade war. And no one will ever completely win an ongoing trade war in this 2025. Back in the 20th century, power was measured in oil barrels. But now in this 21st century, power partly lies in containers and shipping routes. Every export, every shipment, every route is a move in a quiet chess game of global dominance. And as the world enters another chapter of trade tension and adaptation, logistics remains the invisible backbone holding it all together. Once again, I am Odiche, and this is Tales of Logistics. See you next time for another excellent episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and repost. Your support is absolutely appreciated. Voila.